Hello, Warfighters. War is Hell. Welcome to a brand new episode of Top 5 Arma 3, but this is going to be another tips rather than mods, and this is going to be fun. This is the first episode of this that I've ever done with somebody else. Waters is here with me. We're going to be talking about the Top 5 Arma 3 tips to be a good Zeus. You guys know Waters from the Task Force Odin missions that I participate in, and he also helps out a ton of videos for like alternate history, Resolute Alliance, and stuff like that. So, man, it's good to have you here. You excited for this?
I'm really happy, man. This is going to be fun.
Dude, it is going to be amazing. All right, so we're going to do this just like normal. There's going to be the 5 tips, not any order really to them, except for the fact that these are just 5 that we picked out. So here we go, getting started off with tip number 5.
So tip number 5 is just going to be about the fact that not every mission you play is the same. As Zeus, one thing that happens to us a lot is we can really get stuck in a rut of, all right, I'm going to make a compound, and I'm going to put some guys in it, and then I'm going to have them attack this compound, and then they're going to leave. And, there's so much more to military than just hitting compounds and stuff. You can attack convoys. There's waterborne operations, and I don't know about you, Snack, but I never see people do waterborne ops.
No,
Very
it's
rarely.
Yeah, no, I think the only time that I really see any ops where there's any like boats or anything is just like you're going to be inserted via boat, and then that's it.
Right. So and the thing with this too is that when you're going to make missions that are different, it's all about planning. I know for me personally, every week before our 2 ops on weekends for TFO, I spend maybe an hour to an hour and a half or even 2 hours a day putting these missions into Eden or something and just testing them out. I actually have a couple of different mission files set up in Eden that's just a Zeus mission, and I go in and add AI and stuff and kind of play these missions out and plan out where I want things at and stuff. So that way you don't go into the mission just totally flabbergasted at what you're supposed to do.
I would stress too for something like this when you're like planning ahead and you're kind of thinking about, how you want to organize a mission. I think it's important to think about not only just what you're going to be doing for that mission, like, creating objectives that might be a mixture of offense and defensive objectives. But you even think longer term. I know just experiences I've had in milsim where the operations just became really repetitive. Like, hey, for the 6th week in a row, you guys are going to go move into this town and you're going to take it. For me, some of the best experiences that I've had in milsim is when Zeus does get a chance to put something in a mission that I haven't necessarily seen before. I think one that stands out for me, Waters, with something that you did that I just had an absolute blast with, and I know you know this, was that one operation where you threw those scuds at us, and we were sitting there trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, it was unexpected. It was very, very unique. And the fact that we had to change things on the fly and try to determine how we would go about doing something was just absolutely fantastic. And it was just really, really a fresh take on doing like a recon type of objective. So I think as Zeus, there's a lot of ways you can even take some of those commonly done objectives and tweak them just a little bit to give that fresh take on it.
For sure. And, the other thing about that was I did that for a couple of different reasons. One, for something new, but I know as a Zeus for me, and other Zeuses out there I've heard too, with when there's an air division, things as Zeus can, and for the infantry, can get a little boring because air can really take out whatever they need to if it's a fixed wing. So with that, I knew beforehand that there was a good chance that some of those objectives air was going to probably hit before you got there. And I was like, well, if I put these Scud missiles here, they're not going to hit it with the air anymore. And that means the infantry actually is going to have to duke it out some for it. It was a fun one. That was a cool one.
That really was a cool one. But no, I really am glad you brought up this particular point because, having that customization or having that differentiation in missions, I think keeps stuff really, really fresh and is a really good tip for how to be a good Zeus. For tip number 4, as Zeus, you don't just want to create, you also want to command. One of the things that I've always stressed with people when I've talked about Zeus, or just mission making as a whole for players, is that you really need to think of yourself as the Op4 commander. And I think that really helps in the way that you respond to players' actions. We're obviously going to touch on this a lot more in a little bit. But I think that one of the biggest things as Zeus, when you consider yourself the commander of the Op4 unit, it really helps you determine how you're going to interact with players. For example, how are reinforcements going to take place? What are you going to throw at the players? And I know that this is something that we do, in game and actually out of game. Like with TFO, we have, you and me, we are the Op4 representatives, where we kind of think, all right, here's what happened. Here's what the Op4 would do. And it's amazing to see how that translates to being in the game. And I know you can probably talk a little bit more about this, Waters, but just some of the things that you do as Zeus to kind of operate as commander for Op4 that most people don't see. So what are some of the biggest things that you do in that regard?
Well, first things first, a big thank you to you for actually giving this tip whenever I first started Zeusing for TFO.
I'm shaking my head, man. I don't take credit for anything.
I know you don't, but you gave me that tip. And it helps a lot. I play a lot of tabletop games. So when I look at Arma and I look at Zeusing, I look at it like playing a tabletop game. But a tabletop game where I'm not playing to win or to lose. So, as Op4 commander, it doesn't mean that you're actively trying to defeat the players, because that can ruin the fun for everybody. And it's not, I don't think it's fun as a Zeus to actively try and defeat them. But it's more about, like, one thing I do a lot is I'll have some artillery somewhere or mortars at a different base. And, when you're watching an action and combat take place, watch if certain AI run behind a wall where they can't be shot anymore. Like, that's enough time normally for a guy to say, here's my position. We need artillery support now. And, that's always little things like that really helps. Or when you're bringing in reinforcements, think about it like as commander, a couple vehicle and truck transports went in with guys on them and got annihilated before they reached the objective. Well, how are you going to respond to that as a commander? For me, my immediate action would be, let's fast rope or helo drop some guys in and have some guys come in on helicopters and find their way in. Or if you have to, soften up your enemy with artillery. Don't be afraid of artillery, It can be frustrating because we all know the AI doesn't always do what we want it to do. But I would say that, it's less about winning and more about how can I play this tactically. Kind of like chess. It's a lot like chess.
And I think, too, when you consider yourself the commander, you do have to kind of limit some of the things that you do. And I think that is a very, very good thing. For example, if you're going through and you consider yourself, or you think of yourself as the commander of Op4, it really allows the players to have a little bit of a better experience, because you put yourself in that mindset and you'd be like, okay, this is the type of information that a commander would have, in this situation. And this is how a commander would respond. I think it's important to have those limitations and to put yourself in that mentality, because it's really easy. Like when you're Zeus, and tell me if you feel differently, but you have a full view of what's going on down below. The players are experiencing the fog of war. You're technically not. But yeah, when you put yourself in the frame of what would a commander know, you're applying that fog of war to yourself. So that way players sometimes can get an advantage. Other times you're able to leverage an advantage against them. And I just think that creates a better mission and just better gameplay for everybody involved.
For sure. I know for me too, one of the big things is that don't be afraid to RC AI. If you see, your team moving and you think, oh, the AI might be able to see these guys, they might call it in or something. Always just check, RC the AI, or hit backspace on your keyboard and bring your camera down to eye level with the AI that's in question. And if you can't see them, the AI can't see them. So it's a lot of, you have to balance what is realistic and what's not, because it is, in the end, it is a video game, and you are looking at everything from a bird's eye view, like you said, Snack. But I totally agree. I mean, it's so easy as Zeus to kind of get a god complex with some of these. So you really have to balance out that you're not God, you're just the enemy commander a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. No, I think this is a really good point for anybody who's considering or does Zeus to kind of know, you are a commander. And I think with that in mind, people would be able to leverage that to Zeus missions a little bit better.
All right, so tip number 3 for being a very effective Zeus is Zeus. For tip number 3 for being a very effective Zeus would be to find a balance to the action. There's a lot of missions that you can play that doesn't just have to be shooty shooty. I mean, I know for me, I like to give the guys missions that are not focused around shooting your enemy. I know one time we did some fun ops, and the op was not as much focused around shooting the enemy as much as it was finding a nerve gas. Which is, it's important to know that not every battle has to be fought with bullets too.
Mm-hmm.
Hearts and minds is a big thing. Our Vietnam deployment, Snack, you remember, was a lot of that was hearts and minds. Talking to the civilians and making sure that the players aren't just getting burnt out on this. I look down my scope and I shoot the guy in front of me. Sometimes there's more to it than just shooting things. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything from you on that?
Well, I can just, say from my perspective of being on the ground quite a bit and just, some of the ways that I do some missions is I do think that in those opportunities that you have to be able to create stuff in the mission that's not necessarily action oriented, it makes those moments where you are in the action all the more important. Because a lot of times you can, create tension that leads up to a particular event, or, just do a number of other things that makes that action more meaningful. And sometimes I do mention that there are a lot of people who play Arma milsim who want to feel like, they're Rambo, where, they're able to take down a whole bunch of enemy forces and them come out of, alive. And I think why that's still true to some degree, I know that just being in a mission for like 2 hours where I'm just, defending a position that entire time, it does get boring after a while. And so doing things to change that up, I think just makes that action all the sweeter.
I know one thing I love to do to kind of find that balance is after the guys in TFO take an objective, I like to wait on my reinforcements to come in,
Mm-hmm.
or put them in a stressful situation and just leave them hanging like you're on the edge of a cliff, because as Zeus, you have all these strings that you're pulling at once. And if you just hold one of those for the slightest second on a guy, they're going to feel it. I can't name the amount of times in ops where I'm hidden and around you guys, and I've had a moment where I've let you guys collect yourselves, but then it's too quiet after you've collected yourselves, and guys are like, this doesn't feel right. And they get on edge.
Did you hear that tonight?
Yeah, I did. It was really funny because I was down there, and I don't remember who I first heard. It was Pitts. I first heard say it, and he was like, I'm so on edge, dude. He's like, there should be something happening right now. Where are they at? And
yeah,
it was fun.
That got me tense. And I don't know if you heard me, you're like, but I was like, all right, I'm going to get on the second story and try to see what's coming. Like, it's those moments that I think are really, really cool to have. And yeah, nothing really is going on from Zeus, but you've built an environment for us where we know it's not going to be full on action. Like there's going to be reasons behind it. And I also like with what you said there about not calling in reinforcements right away, because I think that goes a little bit to the previous point of, thinking of yourself as a commander. The commander's going to have to give the orders and stuff like that for people to start coming in, and just decisions like that have to kind of make sense.
There's a chain of command, it's like one of my professors here at college tells me all the time. He says, everything relates to everything. Mm-hmm. So no matter what, you're going to find something that relates, and it's going to make it easier for you as a Zeus to help your players do what they want to do and stuff.
All right, so for tip number 2, as Zeus, if you really want to do a good job, you need to consider that you are a storyteller as much as creating the action for everybody. And I think that different ways you could be a storyteller is, one, considering the environment that the players are going to operate in. I know that one of the things that you do really well, Waters, is considering the setting and creating an environment for us to play in. And I think that goes to build some of the tension too. Like with one of the ops where, we were, I think, going up against a virus that had been released or something like that. You had placed civilians that were on the ground. I mean, there was damage. I mean, it definitely felt like, we were in a disaster area, and that, kind of built things up. I know with, other environments that you create, I mean, you consider the setting that we're operating in, and that makes us be more immersed in the game. I also think that as being a storyteller, going back to what you said about everything relates to other things, there's a definite beginning, middle, and end. It's not just hey, you're going to this today to take out this town just because. We've kind of built some things together to where there's a reason why we're doing what we are. You've got events that have kind of led up to that, and so as somebody who is immersed in it, you feel like that you are part of the story. So I guess question for you: what types of things do you feel as important as a storyteller to create for the players?
For me, it all depends. It's it's one of those things that changes so much per mission. I know. So the deployment you were talking about was the nerve gas op that we did,
Yeah.
and that was one of my favorite ones, just because I've always wanted to do something related to nerve agents. But it's like we're always taught in English class. Everything has this exposition and rising action, and then the climax of it all, and then the falling action. And that applies to this just as much as it would to a book or a movie. So when I was doing that nerve gas op, you have to take the time to get on and see what you can do in that area. So for me, I looked around on the map. I found a town that worked. It was far enough away from the water so we could insert easily, but also far enough away to where they didn't know it was coming on their way in. So they get there and then they see people hanging from trees and there's body piles burning and stuff. And that creates this feeling of unease in that kind of situation. But then it goes deeper too, from the kind of situational, all right, I'm going to put down some bodies and stuff to freak the guys out. It can also be more importantly, it can be like, I'm in a winter scenario. Why would somebody a soldier be in non-winter camo? Mm-hmm. That is an effect and stuff to your storytelling. And for me, the biggest thing for storytelling is role play. You have to be willing as Zeus to take the time to role play with your players, because nothing creates a story better than another person's voice. Mm-hmm. I think you would agree with me on that. We role play all the time in the missions and stuff. And I know that for me, when I go back and watch these videos and stuff, I watch those minutes and it helps me so much keep along with what's going on too. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid of role play. I know when I first started, it's scary to go down there and act like you're somebody you're not. But once you just breathe and just kind of settle into it, and it can be a lot of fun. And it creates such a different dynamic, because, again, it goes back to, you don't have to shoot at everyone you see. Sometimes you can talk to them.
Yeah, and knowing that there's a person on the other end, it puts you in a position where you're like, I really don't know what's going to happen. And so it just creates a really cool environment. I know that one of the things I appreciate that you do too, when you RP, is you don't try and do accents or stuff like that. Like, you're just yourself. And that for me allows me to just kind of be more immersed, because I'm like, okay, I'm not distracted necessarily by an accent that somebody's trying to do. It's just, there's a person on the other side of this that I can immediately connect with. And I think those are some of the best moments in TFO that I've had, is RPing with you. I know there are times like I don't even know how, man, but I've been like really worked up, and like I've told you, I'm like, I just wanted to just start yelling at you for stuff that you were saying. Or like, that one op that we were doing in the Vietnam deployment where you had the mayor of the town held hostage, and both Pitts and I, knowing that you had an IED in there, we're like, hey, we're going to drop him. Like, let's just get out of here. Like, it was just a cool moment. And I think that for this point, as we're talking about being a storyteller, you and we've shared a couple stories already. And I think that's one of the really cool points about Arma milsim is when you consider the fact that you're trying to tell a story, you're going to create situations and memories with people that they can share with others. Like, they're going to turn around and tell your story. And I think that just helps not only with people understand more what Arma milsim is about, but with the unit. I just think that's really important to do.
I think the other thing with that is first off, I could hear the anger and like frustration in your voice in the Vietnam op when I was that Chinese officer and I was sassing you. And I could just feel Snack had this like permeating sense of, I want to wrap my hands around your throat, but I can't. And it was so funny because I talked to him afterwards. He's like, I wanted to yell at you, but you're so nice, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's like, I've got a friend on the other side. I don't necessarily want to yell, but I'm like, I actually got worked up. That like never happens.
And and the other thing you can do as a role player, I would argue that accents are super overrated for it.
Yes.
I hate the idea of having to learn an accent. But one thing I do personally is I try to learn native words of the languages of those people. So when we were on Altus, I learned just a couple words in Greek, how to say Turkish, how to say hello in Greek. And it's not that hard. Google Translate exists.
Yeah.
And that adds a little bit of extra because, a lot of the people in these other countries can speak English with their other language. But it's funny too, because sometimes as Zeus, your RP is not going to be the best or you're not going to know about an area. So like in Vietnam, I didn't know anything about the language of Vietnam and how they name themselves. So I just thought, well, we're in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, I'm from the South, so I can do a pretty good country accent. And they walked up to a Vietnamese guy and, it was funny. And it's okay to be funny. This guy walks up to him and says, howdy, my name's Bob. How you doing? and one of the guys looked over. He's like, you're from Vietnam. Well, your name's Bob? And I looked at him and I said, yes, sir, it is. And, that's just part, have fun with them, too. It's everything isn't serious. And stories aren't always serious. I mean, even in action movies, there's humor. So don't be afraid to have fun, too, as a part of your storytelling. It's very important that you're having fun, too.
Yeah. I think when you consider that people are there for the experience and telling a story should be a good part of the experience, that's going to help you be a great Zeus.
All right, so the number one tip that we have, again, no specific order here, would be using cause and effect. And this one is super important to me because I know that Snack mentions it in a lot of his videos that TFO focuses a lot on this kind of cause and effect, that our decisions have consequences. As Zeus, you have to remember too, there's short-term and there's long-term consequences for things. And if you don't have consequences for your players, then how do people learn? So, there have been missions and stuff where things happen and you have to punish them for it. And punish might not be the best word, but there have been times, like say you have a guy flying a helo and he flies over the objective. There are consequences for doing that. Don't just let them get away with it. And it's not a bad thing to have cause and effect because your milsim is about emulating a real military experience through a game. And in the real world, you don't get away with stupid stuff. So don't let people get away with stupid stuff. Now, there's always a balance to that because of it's Arma and Arma is Arma. So I would say, cause and effect is super important. I can't think of any examples right now for short-term ones, but for like long-term cause and effect, going back to the Scud missile op, had they shot one of those Scud missiles or something happened to it, I mean, Scud missiles have a lot of different warheads from HE to chemical to nuclear. Had it been nuclear, sure, it wouldn't have detonated, but that's nuclear radiation that's going to leak all over this island. And there's big effects. There's big consequences for when that happens. So it's not to stress anyone out about saying, hey, there are consequences for what you do. Mm-hmm. It's about making sure that you're still it's creating a story. It's all about that. The storytelling and everything like that, going back to it, is it's all about this. And so cause and effect is just the absolute most important thing. And remembering too that not every battle your unit gets into is going to be a win. People lose, and it's okay to lose. I can name a couple of times in our unit where I've set up objectives and they've went to the objective and they've lost. Uh, because maybe they passed by somewhere and didn't check it, and then a scout was like, okay, these guys are coming, let's ambush them, or let's increase our defenses, and that can cause that. So there's an effect for even the littlest things that you can find, and not push it too far. And don't be afraid. Don't actively go out, but don't be afraid for them to lose. Sure, they might be afterwards like, man, at least I lost. But the one thing that you're always going to hear is, at least I lost for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever force it on them. But if they do something that warrants a pretty heavy response, don't be afraid to give them that response. Snack, do you have anything for that?
Well, and I would even make the argument too with it that, just kind of taking a different approach, like not only just being able to say I lost because of this reason, but I won because of this reason. I think that, for the amount of time that people spend in milsim, and again, it varies with every unit, but most operations are 2-3 hours long. And for that time, I want to feel like that I have made a difference, that I've contributed, and that the outcome is partially because of something that I have done. Whether that's good or bad, like I want to know that I made a difference. I was part of the reason why the outcome, whatever it is, happened. And I know that with a lot of milsim missions that I've been a part of in the past with other units, it always seems like, I shouldn't say always, but oftentimes it seems like Zeus will try and force a victory for everybody. Whether it's, hey, we've got to take this HVT, bring him back to base. Somebody accidentally takes him down, and then Zeus may be like, you know what, I'll just respawn a new one. Here you go. And then, missions won and everything. That, I think, is almost kind of a disservice. Because if you want to get better, you have to be in situations where you're like, okay, hey, what went wrong? And I think that those situations too, where things do go wrong, really helps the situations that do go right be all the sweeter. I know that people have come to me and be like, hey, Snack, I feel like that this mission might not be a good video for you, or you might not have enjoyed it as much because things went south. And I always, like, every single instance I've come back and be like, no, I absolutely loved it. I'm the kind of person who likes to be in those situations where I feel like, things are getting tense, like we're, outnumbered, we're in the fight for our lives, and win or lose, I just love those situations. And if I feel like that an outcome is predetermined, then I'm not going to have that same feeling. And I know you could probably talk about this a little bit more, Waters, but I just feel like with cause and effect, it can be difficult for Zeus sometimes to really implement it, because a person may do something, on the ground that would have that short-term or long-term effect. And that means that you have to be pretty quick in how you adjust as well. So what types of things do you do to rapidly change depending on the situation on the ground, and how do you keep tabs on what players are doing that could make you have to change what you're doing to create an effect for something that happened?
So one of the things I do that actually helps me a lot with that is I tend to get on before ops an hour to an hour and a half early and have the op for AI already set up. So that way, when you guys are moving to objectives and doing stuff, I can pay more attention to you. It's okay to eagle eye them a little bit and stuff. It's your job as Zeus to make sure that things are going the way they should. It's hard to explain it sometimes, but like, I'm trying to think, there's like a good example for like a positive one even was there was a mission in Vietnam. Snack did a video on it where he asked, hey, I'm going to try to contact them through this radio through a translator and stuff. And I was like, give it a shot. And, that's one of those moments too, where you can be like, if this goes badly for them, it's not going to be good. But if it works out, it's going to help. One thing I do to watch is sometimes people will leave a guy behind. That happens more often than you would expect for people to leave someone behind on accident. If somebody gets left behind, that's a great opportunity for you to say as Zeus, well, this guy's going to get intel to the other people. Don't listen to radio chatter. If, I as Zeus quite often will, just for maybe a minute or 2 minutes, will tune into the short range radio channels of the squads. And I only do that because I want to hear if maybe something has happened that I as Zeus can use for a cause and effect reason. And it doesn't make you the bad guy. There's always the people in every community and all across the world and in life that will not be happy with you for doing some things. But I can promise you that it will be so rewarding for you and for the rest of the people in the end when they go through a mission and say, wow, I really messed up. But did I have fun? And I'll do better next time. Or on the flip side, to go through a mission and say, that was a great spot on idea. And I'm so happy that we thought of that and did that so we could actually go through the mission. And, you create that experience. That cause and that effect of everything and stuff is super important. It's hard to explain, it's one of those things that you do it, then don't realize you're doing it after a while. So like for me, it's almost muscle memory at this point to do a lot of the things that I do when it comes to the cause and effect.
Yeah. And one thing I really like that you brought up there is just the interactions with other players when you do implement cause and effect, because I do think that there needs to be accountability all around when you're implementing cause and effect. I mean, you need to have everybody on board. So yeah, if someone says I messed up, they understand why a particular or if they admit or know what they did wrong, they can understand what the consequence is. And one of the things that I like that you do as well is you do leave some things up to chance. I know that, a lot of times with cause and effect, there might be an explanation that's needed as far as, okay, here's what led up to this, here's XYZ decision, brought about, whatever transpired. But, talking about that radio example that you gave, I remember that you rolled a 20-sided die to try to determine what the outcome is. I think that that's a great tip for people who are starting off in this type of area, to try and leave some things up to chance, because, again, there's going to be so many things that you have to take into consideration when it comes to what would be the outcome for this transpiring that you really can't, completely take into consideration or think about yourself. So, using a die, or I know we use a formula in Excel for some things to try and produce a random outcome, I think is a pretty good tip, for this category as well.
And, from someone who plays a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, the amount of times I use a 20-sided die to decide real life decisions is probably unhealthy. So, don't be afraid to leave something up to fate. Sometimes it might not be what you want as Zeus, and it might not be what the players want as players, but you made that choice and they let you make that choice. And that's all that matters, is that, you did what you thought is the right thing at that time. And like Snack was saying, throwing a die or something, there's for that one specifically, it was just a 50-50 chance of it going either way. And, just tell them like, hey, I have a dice with me. And that's what I keep it for, is for events that happen that I can't make up a consequence for without knowing all the information, of which I don't know all the information. Cause and effect, the other thing with it I wanted to just touch on real quick. Cause and effect changes a lot by faction, I would say. Mm-hmm. When it's a full military faction, there is a very different way that cause and effect is going to work versus, say, an insurgent group. The insurgents are not going to have the best radios to get a hold of each other. They're not going to have all the stuff that a full-scale military force is going to have. So keep that in mind too. If it's a military force, maybe they don't just send infantry in and they say, I'm going to shoot a tank and infantry. And like, that's what a military force is going to do. But if it's an insurgent faction, maybe they're going to say, instead of sending guys in, I'll IED a road that they could possibly come on. So it's a lot of, just paying attention to the factions and the people you're with. But it's not as hard as you would think. Once you start trying it, it really does just become habit. I know Snack Man has helped me a lot with this table he created. It's, whew, I tell you what, made my life 12 times easier.
The one that we used in Belarus, are you talking that one?
Yeah, the Belarus table was awesome.
Yeah. So since people haven't seen it, I mean, essentially what it is it produces a random number in Excel, anywhere between -20 to 100. And based off of the random number that gets generated, that lets us know, how much detail would we get on a particular bit of information, such as, this person that we captured, how much would they know about the location of the next objective, or how much information would they have about the enemy forces that are there. And the reason why there's a negative number is because that person could lie. And, depending on the number, like if it's a hard negative in that direction, then, we'll do something like set up an ambush, for example. Or if they get a really high number, that means, okay, they're going to tell you exactly where that is. And we started using that. And I really did like it too, because there was that one objective where the other team, got ambushed really hard because it was a negative roll. And we had implemented other bonuses and penalties for certain things too. Like, if you interrogate somebody using advanced interrogation techniques or torture, that's, in some instances, people are more likely to lie to try and avoid, the pain and suffering that they'd have to go through. Or that they'd be more likely to lie. And so we wanted to reflect that. But then, you could have somebody who really isn't in the fight for anything, and you just ask them questions and they'll, boom, tell you everything that you want to know. So it's been cool implementing that. I'm really excited to see how this kind of plays out, in the future. Most players in TFO don't know that we have this. So, hey, surprise. But, it's been a pretty positive thing. And again, as we've done more with, cause and effect, and we've kind of dived deeper into it, I think it's really made a lot of the stuff that TFO does pretty special.
And I actually have one last thing, and I'm going to call it tip 0.5. We're going to add a new number real quick.
Okay.
And that's just, don't have fear as Zeus. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid to do something people might not like, because you're learning just as much as the rest of them are. So don't be afraid to do things. I know it's hard to not be afraid, but don't hold back sometimes. Let yourself have that creative freedom, because it really does make a difference. And that's just my personal advice to anyone who ever wants to get into Zeus, is just hold your fears back, and you'll just go out of the marks with it.
100%. I mean, I tell people in a lot of communities, or just the missions that people play, not to put too much pressure on you, Waters, or anybody else, but Zeus can make or break the mission. And that means that for you to be a good Zeus, you have to have experience. You have to go through trial and error. You have to have a group that's willing to support you in how you make your own missions. And so I really do like that, like not having fear with what you're doing. Go balls to the wall with something. And if it doesn't work, what's the worst that could happen? People respawn, right? I mean, even though we're playing military type of scenarios, it's not like, physical harm will really come to anybody if things don't go the way that you or they want it. And so it's a great opportunity to learn, to grow, and just kind of experience a part of Arma that very few people get to see. And it's really special. I love Zeusing. Waters, I know you love Zeusing, and I think that a lot of the successes and enjoyable experiences we have had have been allowed to us because of our ability to be able to experiment and to try new things.
It's a very important thing. I mean, I don't want to go too much more on it, because there's not a whole lot more that can be said for the idea of no fear, but it's so important. You can't let yourself be held back from it, because people know I know Snack, you've come to me after missions and been like, hey, are you okay? Something just felt weird about that one or something. And I'll message and be like, yeah, I had some fear and stuff. And, people will tell you, and, tell people to be open with you. Don't let people be afraid to be open with you either. Because, hey, it's all a learning experience, and like Snack said, what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, just because you got shot by somebody in the game doesn't mean that somebody's going to come in your room with an AK in pocket,
Hey, full-blown realism in Arma 3 would be if you die, you have to uninstall the game and never play it again.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't do it because as Zeus, I die.
Right?
And I can make myself invincible. So don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
Well, Snack, man, thank you so much for letting me do this with you. It's been a blast.
No, anytime. I was thinking, how would you feel if we did a top 5 tips on how to be a bad Zeus?
I would love that.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to do that one because I think,
amazing.
There's experiences learning from stuff that doesn't work, and I'd be happy to share some of the things that I've found out. And I know you have some experiences too. Just things that you've seen other Zeuses do or something like that. I mean, you are a fantastic Zeus, so I wasn't saying that you have
Hold on.
You've done terrible.
I'm just another guy who puts AI down. I'm not fantastic.
No, but just kind of sharing some of the things that we've come across that people could improve on, or just common traps people fall into. I think that'd be kind of cool. So you down to do that?
Awesome. And I have one last thing to the followers of the War is Hell channel. A huge thank you to all of you guys in the comments that have supported me through it and said, hey, who's the Zeus? He does a really good job. I might not make content on the channel, but you guys mean a lot to me too with your kind words and stuff.
Yeah, you get some awesome comments. I freaking love seeing that.
It means a lot to me, man. As a Zeus, and I know other Zeus will say the same, you get some confidence issues with it because, it's not like people are praising you all the time. And Lord knows I don't want that. I get nervous when people praise me.
Same.
But so whenever I see those comments and stuff. So again, huge thanks to the War is Hell community for being pretty spot on freaking awesome dudes.
Yeah, we got a good group here.
Another great thanks to our boy, Dunbar Snack Bar, for being our friend.
No, it's fun. No, I appreciate all you do. But yeah, no, we'll do something more again here pretty soon. So I appreciate you guys all watching this. I know this is probably longer than what I normally do for this, but honestly, some really good stuff I feel like we were able to talk about. And it's great to get another person on here to kind of help out. So I'd be really interested to see if you guys would want me to do more videos like this where bring somebody on and we kind of share some experiences just to kind of help you guys out in the Arma community. So yeah, put that in the comment section. But thanks for watching this all the way through. Biggest thanks goes to everybody at Patreon for supporting me, allowing me to do this, because really I couldn't do it without you guys. Their names should be showing up. And if you want your name to show up next to theirs, or if you want to support me the same way that these people do, just go ahead and look in the description below. You'll find the link to Patreon there. But anyway, thanks for watching. War is Hell. You don't have to worry, because Warfighters, I got your 6.